the personality gets involved, and the personality wants to find any reason not to listen to this, any reason to say this isn't just, it doesn't meet my standards. Person's got an accent. I don't listen to people with accents. The person talks too soft. I don't listen to people that talk too soft. And I hear this because the personality is in conflict with the truth. The personality is in conflict with the truth. And you're being that which is in conflict with the truth. So there's this natural resistance. And the reason that that's the case is because your brain has been completely conditioned with the idea that you are this body, you are this personality, that's the way it is. And if anything's going to work, that's what you're going to get to work. If anything is going to be enlightened, that's what's going to be enlightened, because that's me, right? That's me. And when I hear about enlightenment, when I hear about what it has to offer me, I want that for me. I want it for me. And then what happens, you see, is the person, once the person is establishing itself as the seeker, right? Then it's safe to be a seeker. It's safe to be a seeker because the person has no intention of actually being enlightened. They don't even know they don't have an intention of being enlightened. They're committed to what they consider to be real and true. I am the body. I am me. I am the person. But in this conversation, that starts to lose its value, right? It starts to lose its legitimacy, right? So now the person is in this position of playing a game, right? I don't want to be caught being the person here, right? Because being the person here is a lower position than being the awareness, and I don't want to be in a lower position, so I'm going to see if I can play this game correctly. I'm going to watch what I say so I don't get caught being a person, right? Of course, that's the person doing that, okay? So it's very insidious, right? And the thing that I wanted to talk about today is the fact that sometimes I assume too much. Often, most of the time, I assume too much in terms of teaching these things, because I assume that if I say to you that the heart of the matter, that the key to these teachings and practices has to do with a fundamental error, an error that is so fundamental and so much the foundation of your existence that without that error being corrected, nothing can work. Nothing can work. Yeah, because you can't continue to live your life as if you're something you're not and expect it to work. When you look in a mirror, do you think that you're the image in the mirror? Say yes. Do you think you're the image in the mirror? Well, what's that mean? Well, it means two things, really. First of all, the image is the image. That's in the mirror. You're here, right? So you're not the image in the mirror, right? But you identify with the image in the mirror, meaning that you think it's an accurate reflection of you. But don't you, right? When you were a little kid, somebody put you in front of the mirror and said, there you are. That's an accurate reflection of you. So you identify with what's in the mirror, and what's in the mirror is a physical body. And this is something that you do all the time. When you wake up in the morning and you go in the bathroom, you don't stop and say, oh, I can see there's a body in the mirror there, but I know that's not what I am. You don't do that. No. The automaticity of it plays, right? The mechanical of it plays. You just go in there and you're being the body in the mirror. And then you shave the face of the body in the mirror if you're a man, or you do all the other things that you do if you're a woman to try and make yourself presentable. That's interesting, make yourself presentable. But that's how people live, right? They're very involved with their appearance, and so they want to look good. They don't want to look bad. They want to present well. Why? Because in the world we live in, we're all separate from one another, and this is a competition. When you're a little kid, they don't tell you, well, this is the beginning of a competition. When you're a little kid, and for the rest of your life, you're going to be competing. They don't say that, but it is a competition. And for sure, you know that without any doubt. Well, you know it at home before you go to school if you have brothers and sisters, right? Because the competition starts there. But then when you go to school, it's obvious this is a competition. You look around, some of the kids have nicer clothes than you do, right? Some of the kids' bodies are, according to our standards, more attractive than your body, right? So right away you're thrown into the competition, right? And the interesting thing is about it, no matter how well off you think you are in this game, right? It's a losing game, no matter how well off you think you are, right? I'm working with a client right now that was a single child, right? Brought up in great circumstances, loving parents, plenty of money, plenty of support, right? And he's crazy neurotic. He's crazy neurotic. And it's interesting how these complexities permeate the situation and create problems, right? Because you think, well, okay, the life of a person, you say the life of a person involves suffering and it can never work. Well, but this kid, he was born with the spoon in the right place. His parents had money, he was in a loving environment, very attractive young man, nice looking body, right? Above average intelligence, he's got it all checked off, right? And he's neurotic and he's suffering and he's in trouble in his relationships. He's in trouble in terms of his experience of his life. He's gotten into some bad situations recently, right? And the reality of it is, although you would think that the circumstances were right for him and that shouldn't be the case, but interestingly enough, there's a thing called the complex of the single child. The neurosis of the single child, right? Because there's no other kids around, he gets all the attention, right? Gets everything he wants, gets all the attention. He's told all the time, you're wonderful, you're beautiful, you're smart, you can do nothing wrong, right? Well, what this ends up doing when it comes to the way the personality works is it creates insecurity. Because now the kid's saying, they're saying, I'm wonderful, I'm great. Why are they telling me this all the time? Maybe it's because I'm not so great and they're trying to help me. This is how the personality works, because the personality is always lacking. Personality is always paying attention to what's wrong, right? So no matter how beautiful you are, no matter what the circumstances are that are the great circumstances that you were born into, right? In an inverse way, you actually be crazier than other people in that situation. Because the neurosis is a function of a misunderstanding about what you are. And if you come from a situation where the situation is supposed to correct that, it doesn't. It doesn't, because no, it's not mental illness. It's the typical normal neurotic condition in which, look at yourself. If you want to understand what I'm talking about, look at yourself. Isn't it true that you're insecure about certain things? Yeah, because their personality is inherently experiencing lacking. That's part of the way the personality operates. What's wrong with me? You're in competition at all times, right? So the personality is always lacking something, right? So you're always paying attention to, oh, he's prettier than me, he's smarter than me, they have more money than I do, right? And so then you feel insecure, and when you're insecure, this nags at you. Oh, well, what if this happens, and what if that happens, and how am I going to be happy, and so it goes on and turns into all these complexes and fixations, that go on. That's all the world of the personality. The fundamental disturbance goes back to this misunderstanding about what you are, and that's why this is so important. Maybe that's the only thing I should talk about here, because if I talk about it and I think that there's an understanding that the concepts that I'm presenting to you must be clear enough that you can see what I'm pointing to, and then I assume you did, right? And then go on to talk about, okay, now that you know who you are, let's deal with undoing this mistake, how this mistake has manifested in your brain being, interested in having you survive as something you're really not. Your brain having all these patterns that are driven by fear and insecurity. But we can't deal with any of that if you haven't really handled the first piece. Because if you don't handle the first piece, and if the way you relate to the first piece is, oh, I get it, he's saying that there's a mistake that's been made. The mistake that was made is that me, like most of humanity, goes through a process of being conditioned, of being told what we are, being told who we are, given a name, right? And we have no way of not accepting that, and so we believe it, and we go on, and we identify ourselves as that, and we live our lives as that, when in fact, That's not actual, when in fact that's not real, when in fact that only exists as a concept. Who you think you are, who you've been being in your life, only exists in the thinking activity. It doesn't exist anywhere else. If I ask you who you are, you have to tell me what you think. You have no alternative. There's nothing else, no other place for you to go is to tell me what you think, even though that's not true. But you don't have anywhere else to go, right? Because if I ask you who you are, you do what you do all the time to answer a question, right? You look to see what the voice in your head says and you repeat it. That's what you do. And the voice is going to tell you what you think you are, because the voice is the voice of the mind. It's the voice of thinking, right? And the reality of it is that is not true at all. And if you think you're that, you're ignoring the truth. If you think you're that and you're being that and you're living your life as that, then you're playing the games that you're given to play as that, which is competition, right? Yeah, which is being separate from other people. So now you have to negotiate relationships, right? Being separate from the world. So now you have to negotiate circumstances, right? And this becomes your preoccupation, doesn't it? Make enough money to get the food, to get the right circumstances, to get the right house, to buy the right clothes, to get the right people in relationship with me, right? And this is what everybody's up to, isn't it? This is what human beings are up to, right? Is to get this to work, get the situation I find myself in to work, right? Nothing wrong with that except that it doesn't work. And leaves people feeling insecure, anxious, depressed, disassociated, addicted, right? Sound familiar, right? It's like the common experience of human beings, right? So that's got to get handled first. And you have to understand, it's not enough to get the conceptual understanding of it and say, oh, I understand what he's saying. And when these things are taught, specific examples are given that are irrefutable. You can't argue with me about the truth because I can outdo you. I can point to evidence, and the only thing you can tell me is what you believe. But I can show you evidence. I can show you evidence that the voice in your head is not true. And you can't refute that evidence. It's irrefutable. So you can't. So there you are with that situation. Conceptually, you come to an understanding, okay, I get it. I've heard the examples, right? I get it. I understand it as a concept, right? Now, if you understand it as a concept and you leave it at that, okay, you cannot go forward and do anything that's going to make any difference. Because the conceptual understanding by the person is good news, right? Conceptual understanding is good news. Here's the way it gets processed by the person. There's this possibility of being. There's this possibility. And this possibility is the realization of your true nature. And if you realize your true nature, it will offer you what's possible for a human life. You'll be satisfied, you'll be content, you'll be happy, you'll be fearless, you won't be afraid of your mortality anymore. You'll feel at home with yourself, you'll be able to function at ease in the world. You'll be happy naturally, right? So the personality looks at that and says, well, how could I not want that? You know, how can I not want that? How can I get that? And then the first conclusion is made that creates safety for the personality, and that is, but I am not that now. As soon as the conclusion is made that I am not that now, right, you have reinvented the lie at another level. Reinvented the lie at another, because you are that now, right? So as soon as you say I'm not that now and you start the process of becoming that, the personality is safe. I don't have to worry. While it's inevitable that you must continue to operate as the personality because your brain is programmed to be that, right? You can recognize the truth even though that's happening. You can recognize the truth even though that's happening and start to watch it and start to see how it is shaping your life, to start to see how it is resulting in the problems you have, right? And therefore start to withdraw your attention and energy from that and give your attention and energy to reality, to what you really are, to the way it really is, so you can get some real results, okay? But that can't happen unless not only do you understand the concept about who you are, right? That's not going to go anywhere. That's the person now having this interesting concept about who they are. That's what that is, right? So that's not going to go anywhere. That can keep the person safe. The person's not threatened here, right? But the next step is the step that matters. It's the step that has to occur for you to do the rest of the work. And the next step is to actually look. Okay, I get the concept, but now if it's true that the reality of what I am is always here, and it's called awareness or consciousness, if that's the case, I must be able to see it. If it's here, right? I don't have to just understand the concept. It's real, it's here, it's actual, okay? And so I must be able to see it. And then this process starts to occur that's the beginning of the seeking process, right? In which you're looking to see yourself. You're looking to see yourself. Because the personality will lie to you and tell you it wants to be that. But it really doesn't want to be that. How could it want to be that? Because it's going to mean it's alienation. How can it want to be that when it's going to mean that it has to die first, right? So it's just playing a game with you to keep you involved in being the personality. And all it has to do to keep you involved in being the personality is keep you convinced that you're not what you really are. That's all it has to do. That's what it does with you all the time. Keeps you convinced that you're not what you really are. And then who you think you are complains about it. Oh, I don't know what's wrong here. I understand the concepts, right? But I just keep, I keep falling into the same ruts. It just seems to just keep being neurotic, keep being anxious, have trouble sleeping. I don't know what's wrong, right? Maybe I need to read another book. Maybe I need to go on a retreat and really starve the personality from getting energy, and then it'll become the personality, right? You see how tantalizing that is? You see how that looks like a good idea, right? But it's not a good idea because it just furthers the lie. Because you right there, while you're saying, maybe if I go on a retreat, I'll become what I really am. You right there saying that is already that. Because if you believe you're something you're not, and that's causing you suffering, and you're claiming you really don't want to be that, right? Then my suggestion, my advice is be more of that. Go further, go farther. It's like this guy said to me that, was just coming to my classes for a while. I ran into him in the bathroom. He's a psychologist. I ran into him in the bathroom. I said, how you doing? Oh, man, I don't know. And he's like really studying the teachings. He goes from one teacher to the next. And he says, I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall. And I said, oh, yeah. He said, what do you think? I said, bang it harder. Really, because what has to happen, whether it's a retreat or banging your head against the wall or reading 100 books, or meditating 10 hours a day, right? All of that is inside the understanding that hasn't happened, I'm not that, and these are the things I could do to become that, okay? Now, so why do I recommend it? Because I recommend it to get it over with. I want to help you get to the failure part. Right? I want you to get to the part where you realize unequivocally, without any doubt, that there's nothing you can do to be what you already are. If you believe there is, then I want you to do that so you can find out. And you'll find out that it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You can't. There's no way. There is no possibility of becoming what you already are. No possibility. And so once the conclusion is made by the personality that I am not that, that's going to stay like that until you thoroughly fail with that operation, right? Until you thoroughly fail and you give up. And that's why they say surrender is a means to the end. Giving up is a means to the end. Why? Because there's nothing to do. There's nothing to learn. There's nowhere to go. That's why surrender works. Because if you surrender, you give up trying to be what you are. Now, this business of being what you are, okay, so you suppose you get what I'm saying right now and you realize, okay, understanding it as a concept is not going to get it. It's not going to work. All right, so what do I have to do? I have to look and see. If this awareness is real and here all the time, I must be able to recognize it. I don't have to, why should I have to have a concept about something that I can actually have a direct experience of, right? And that's what's necessary. That's what's called enlightenment, the direct experience of the truth, not an idea about it, not a concept about it. So you go to look, right? And when you go to look, the personality will have you look to see if you can see who you are. And upon not seeing who you are, it'll say, see, that's all bullshit. Why did you believe that stuff, right? That's all bullshit. It can't be true because you can't, you looked and you didn't see anything, right? That's the way the personality does it, right? But what you have to understand is there is a reason why if you look to see the awareness, you can't see it. That's the person's way of knowing things, is to see them, right? It's there, I can see it. I can know it because I can see it, right? And then I can manipulate it, right? But this is the one thing in the world, this is the one thing that is not like that. And what I mean to say is that you cannot see who you are. You can look for it, right? You can look for it. You can turn your attention back and look for it, right? But while you may be in the right direction now, right, you'll never see it. No matter how close you get to it, you can't see it. Why? Yeah, because you can't see something that's not apart from you. That's why you can't see it. You can't see something that's not separate from you. That's why it's called non-dual. It's not separate from you. You can't see it, but you can be it, and you are being it, and you've always been being it, but you've been ignoring the experience of the awareness that you are and putting over it and in front of it these beliefs and these concepts, right, about who you are, called I am the body, I am the personality, I am my story, on and on and on. And you've been preoccupied with giving that all your energy and attention because you thought that was true. And you've been suffering, and the reason you've been suffering is because it's not true. It's not true. The limited physical body living in time and space and the limited personality living in your brain, right, is not actual. It's being generated all the time. It's being generated by thinking all the time. The actuality of what you are is not something you will ever see. It's something you are always being, but not paying attention to. So what are we doing in meditation? We're paying attention to it. That's what we're doing. We're moving our attention out of the thought process. The thought process is generating the illusion. The thought process is generating the illusion. In other words, when you are thinking, it's like you're putting colored glasses on, and the thoughts are what you're seeing the world through. So you look out there, what do you see? You see a tree. Is that really a tree? No. But these glasses, which are the concepts that I look at things through, tell me that's a tree. And that same thing is what's keeping you stuck with the idea that you're your body or you're your personality. It's just the beliefs. It's just the glasses you're looking at it through, right? But if you take the glasses off, so you stop looking, you stop trying to find what you already are, you stop trying to go home and experience that you are home, you stop trying to become what you are and start experiencing that you are what you are. But it's got to be experiential. You've got to see it. You've got to see the concept of it. Then you got to look for it. Then you got to be it. And you've got to actually get that you got it. You see what I'm saying? You got to get that you got it. You got to get that you're convinced. This is not a theory. This is not a belief. I've experienced the truth of myself. I'm convinced. There's no doubt about that now, right? Now we can go on and start to look at, okay, now that you know who you are, now you can start noticing that you're being who you're not. Now you can start noticing that you are having your behavior be determined by who you think you are. You have what you say be determined by who you think you are, right? You have the experience you're having of your life by what you think it is. It's called your story, right? You have a story. If I ask you how you're doing, you tell me a story. Right? That's how the personality lives. It lives inside a story. It's always got a story going on. And people get together, they compare their stories. Okay? So this is what I want to really get across today, that you've got to get that foundation straightened out. You've got to correct the mistake. And you've got to correct it experientially. Then you can go on and start to do some work because you're not the personality anymore. You have one instead of your being one. And because you have one, you can see it instead of being it. You can see that it shows up in your thinking. If you want to change it, you start changing the cognition. If you want to change it, you can. If you're not the personality, can you see that you can really make major changes? Right? The reason that you can get your furniture remodeled is because you're not your furniture, right? The reason you can get your personality remodeled is because you're not your personality. If you're being the personality, it's like telling the furniture to remodel itself. Do you understand? It can't do that. It can't do that because it's being it. It can't get outside of it to do anything about it. It's being it all the time, right? So the first thing has to be that you've got to recognize that you are other than what is in the mirror. You are other than what's showing up in the thought process, which is the personality. When you see you're other than that, now you can start to be aware of it from somewhere other than being it and catch yourself being stupid. You can be aware of it other than being it. So now you're in a situation with somebody that you're in a relationship with. It could be your husband, your wife, your partners, your kids, your business partner, your neighbor, your friend, whatever it is, right? And because you have a way of seeing the personality instead of being the personality, when it starts getting stupid and acting stupid, you can see it. When you're being it, you can't see it. You'll actually defend your stupidity because it's you. It's your ego. You know what I mean? It's your ego. If you're offended, if the personality is offended and you think you're the personality, then you will do whatever it takes to defend that personality. You'll get hostile. You'll get aggressive. You'll get nasty, right? But if you see that that's not what you are, and you watch it in operation, and you can see what it's doing, it's protecting itself against threats that don't exist, and you can see that in real time, then you stop. You can wake up in the middle of a fight with somebody and realize how crazy you're being, and stop. And start to save yourself that energy, and start to realize that this is the work. This is the work. Now you can be in the world who you really want to be in the world because you have a place from which to be that instead of being stuck in the middle of what it is and have no way to do anything. Yeah. Whenever you ask me a question, I'm going to take you back to who's speaking right now. Because if you don't get that straightened out, there's nothing to talk about. You ask me, how do you stop anxiety when you're anxious? If you're being the personality asking me, the answer to that question would be, well, take some medication. Or practice if you want to be more new age, practice meditation. That's how you can. Now, then you as a person will practice meditation to try and control the experience you're having of anxiety, right? But you see, if you go back and examine what I've been talking about here, and you realize the true solution to anxiety is realize that the one who's being anxious doesn't exist. That's the ultimate solution to anxiety. Now, if you got clear about that and you actually experienced that to be the truth, now we can go to work on cleaning up the brain, because the brain still thinks it does exist. And the brain, therefore, will ask a question like, how do I get rid of the anxiety? How do I control the anxiety? See, when you know who you are, all you do is withdraw the energy from the process in which you think you're the person who's anxious. If you know who you are, all you do is withdraw the energy from the process of thinking in which you think you're the person who's anxious. And if I ask you why you're anxious, you could tell me circumstances. I'm anxious because I have a cold, I don't feel good today. I'm anxious because I don't have enough money. I'm anxious because somebody left me. I'm anxious because there's a war in the Ukraine. I'm anxious because who the president is. I mean, there's endless stuff to that. That's what people spend their social lives doing. Look on Facebook, right? That's what people are talking about all the time, right? What I think, what I believe. I posted something. You saw these posts. I posted something. Every once in a while I post something, usually with a picture of Ramana Maharshi, something that is a pure statement of Dharma, pure truth, right? And it's inevitable that underneath that, when people make a comment, always there'll be somebody say, well, you could look at it that way. And of course I don't answer that, because if I answer that, I'll be as stupid as the person that's talking. And I don't say stupidity in a defamation way, right? Stupidity comes along with being a person. Being a person makes you stupid. If you don't trust me, pay attention. Recently when I've been working with people online, I've started to record the sessions. And I think I'm going to do that more often. Then I say to the person, go back after we're done and look at yourself. Go back after we're done and look at that person in the video. Watch what they say. Watch what they do. See them being a person trying to become enlightened. Watch it. You can see it right there. I see it when I look at them. Right? So that's a valuable thing to do, is record yourself, make a video of yourself, or look at yourself in a video that you've taken in the past, but this time look to see who you're being. Look at the video and see who you're being in the video, not just look at the video. If you really look and see who you're being, you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see the person show up. The person will show up. Now, these teachings, what will happen with these teachings is as they come to the personality, first of all, the personality has to resist. Has to resist. Because remember, the personality is being told you're not real. Okay? It has to resist, right? So when it comes to the personality, there's a number of different ways the personality will resist. It will distract your attention, so you start thinking about something else, all right? That way you won't hear what I'm saying, right? Or did you ever notice if you're listening to somebody, a lot of times when I'm watching a program on TV and I'm really like listening to it, my wife will start talking. And I know she doesn't mean it and she doesn't understand everything. So I know I can't hear her and that at the same time. And I know if I'm listening to that, I won't hear her, right? And I really do want to hear the rest of that, right? So I'll pretend I'm listening, right? Pretend I'm listening. And then every once in a while, I'll say something so she believes that I am listening. Like, oh, yeah. But the reason I'm pointing that out is because you can do that here. You can be sitting here with me, right? And something will come up in your mind about tomorrow or yesterday, and your mind will say, oh, wait a minute, you can come right back to what Dr. Parrish is saying. Wait a minute, you got to think about this. What about tomorrow? What are you going to do? What time do you have to get up? What do you?
Like a daydreaming type thing.
Yeah, it is a daydreaming thing. Yeah. It's a dreaming thing, right? So then you're gone. Right? Then you're gone. But you don't notice that you were gone, right? And then you come back and I'm talking and now you realize, I don't understand what the hell he's saying. But instead of taking responsibility for going away, you blame it on me.
They call it ADHD.
You blame it on me. You say, you're confusing me. Or that's confusing. Could you repeat that again? Right? I'm not confusing you. You're being confused, right? So what this person said to me today is she said, a lot of the times the things that you talk about when we're talking, they come to me, but they don't get in. They come to me and they go past me. And she said, it's kind of like, did you ever try and water a plant where the dirt in the plant is dry? And you pour the water and the water goes through the soil. It doesn't really water the plant, it goes through the soil, right? That's how my mind is. That's what the woman was saying. That's how my mind, and that's so true. That's so true. And so she said, if I go back and I listen to what you were saying on the video, then I find myself saying, oh, that's what he meant. That's what he was talking about, right? So you have to soak your brain. See, you have to soak your mind in this, right? You have to go back and soak. When the Muji says you have to marinate in it, right? You have to marinate in it so you can let it do its work. You can let the truth, right? You can let the truth start to infiltrate your brain a little at a time by reviewing the truth over and over again and seeing it deeper and understanding it more like that, right? And so this is an important part of the process, right? That's why I do the YouTube videos, right? So you can go back and re-listen to what I'm saying here, right? Because your mind and your brain is going to be like the dry dirt, right? They talk in spiritual teachings and this whole dynamic between the teachings and the teachers and the students, and they say that if the student is ripe, right? If their mind is dry and it won't take much of a spark to start a fire, right? They can light up very easily when hearing the truth. But if their mind is wet or damp, right? And that's an analogy for heavy conditioning, right? Then you can hold a match there and it won't light anything. It'll put the match out, right? So this is a way of understanding the nature of your own mind and what you're bringing to this process. And if you find it's difficult, then you might be wet. You might be all wet.
Do dehydration process.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you find it difficult, you might be all wet, or your mind might be all wet. So you may have to saturate, you may have to soak in these things for a while. And if you do, and because you do, you say, oh, now I see what he was talking about, then that's what you need to do in order to get it. You got to get the concept, right? You can't just say, oh, that sounds interesting, but I don't understand it. No, you really do have to do the work necessary to understand these things, and that may mean you may have to keep revisiting them. That's why repetition is so much part of these teaching. If you listen to these teachers, every teacher that I ever listened to that's talking about non-duality says the exact same thing. It may be a little different, in terms of how they go at it and so forth, but it's always boils down to the same thing. What I just got done saying here today about the necessity of having a clear and direct recognition of who you are, every teacher will say that in the beginning. Every non-dual teacher will say that in the beginning. They have to, because that's the essence of non-duality. That's the essence of the teaching. And then after that, they can talk about why you didn't get that, or why you thought you got that and you didn't get that, right? And you have to keep going back until it's clear for you that you don't tell me I understand the concepts, you tell me I'm convinced of the truth. Then with that conviction, you can go and start to deal with your brain and your mind. You can start to clean up your act. You can start to wake up and you can start to show up, wake up and show up. You can start to be present to what's really happening instead of living in the world in your head like that. All right, that's enough.